stories turn songs into symphonies, events into memories, and lives into legends. In our crowded world, knowing your story cuts through the noise so you can make your mark, whether you want to sell more books, increase profits, or just make a difference. At Sterling & Stone, story is our business. The Story Studio podcast is where we explore ways we can all tell our stories better. And now, with the Story Studio podcast number 16, here's Johnny, Sean, and Dave.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today we're going to continue with the third episode in our little arc on foundations and starting right. The first one we did was sort of what is a story studio, what does it mean to be what it is that Sterling & Stone is, our basics. The second one I was calling Focus is Power, which is just sort of the idea of the hedgehog concept. And I will say that I listened back to it and the discussions of Ron Jeremy, Sean being distracted by Slack photos of Ron Jeremy holding a hedgehog with Obama in the background and maybe pancakes.
That was surreal. That was just surreal.
It really was. That was just, that's good podcasting. Let's face it.
I'm afraid to listen back to those episodes. I kind of want to because it feels like a rebirth and it feels like it would be fun to listen to. But you just reminded me about the Ron Jeremy stuff. Was that the Japanese robot comment?
No, that was on the other one. And what was really a really good sense of justice was I was trying to hold it together after you made the Japanese robot joke. And then during the next episode, because we record these right in a row, Sean was being distracted by Dave and I sharing Ron Jeremy hedgehog pictures. And he was like, oh, these guys are being assholes. And I was like, oh, what's that like, bitch?
Well, good thing we aren't going to mention that again.
Right. Sean's afraid. Every once in a while, guys, Dave asks us to pull an episode. There's a whole archive of private episodes.
Oh, that's right. We had a pulled episode of Worst Show Ever just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, all episodes should be pulled.
Right.
Okay. So Dave makes the argument almost on a weekly basis, but every 3 months or so, we actually listen because, oh yeah, I think we did. We did say some things that maybe you shouldn't be there.
It's like the carrot and the donkey. Every once in a while, you got to give the donkey a bite of that carrot or it'll stop being led. So every once in a while, we got to let Dave win and pull one down.
It's totally fair, too.
Right. Anyway, so this episode is going to be, I just, it's funny because I keep saying these things like they're going to change, but we're far too lazy to change them. And we're having fun now. So I don't want to change it. So I'm calling this Getting Our Shit Together, which is just going to sort of, on one level, it is kind of eating our vegetables as a company and just really making sure that we finally dotted I's and crossed T's that we ignored for the longest time. We were back of the napkin for the longest time. But also, I think that this is a really important chapter in terms of growing up and something that I think a lot of people in startups are going to learn from. That eventually, you can't let the need to quote unquote get it right impede your early momentum. You can't let it impede you from getting started, but conversely, you can't do it that way forever. Eventually you have to come back and get it together. So this is about how we really kind of grew up as a company, cleared out a lot of our debt, not literal debt, but idea debt, architectural debt. We'll talk about all that stuff. And mainly the 2016 show is what this was.
Yeah, kind of. And this stuff is, it's the kind of clutter that you really want to clear. And it doesn't feel like, for a creative company, all of us like to make stuff, and there's a lot of waste when you make stuff. If you think about anything, when I had the flower shop, anytime we made, a lot of different flower arrangements, we made a big mess. We're chopping stems, we're pulling petals, there's a mess left over. If you cook a delicious meal, there's a mess in the kitchen, right? You're always, any kind of creation, when my daughter goes out to make something, she's cutting paper and she's drawing and she's, crumpling things up and throwing it away. There's even if you,
and then the person in the store says you have to pay for those things.
Only half the time. She's very friendly. She could talk her way out of shit. It's crazy. But the truth is, even if it's a digital situation, it's still waste. Dave has, written 50,000 words and thrown them away. Johnny and I have written entire books and then said, okay, we should just rewrite that book. So the second Robot Proletariat book, we just totally rewrote.
Yeah, and that's harrowing to somebody who hasn't written a book or has written one. But guys, once you've written basically 100 books between us, and that number probably keeps sneaking up since we haven't updated it, you just kind of don't care. Like there are books that are like we've pulled down. I'm like, is that published? Even ones that I like, we've just never gotten back to them. You know, like, okay.
Yeah, there's waste on the floor, and that's fine. I think in the early days of a company, that's good. You want to have your creative muscles. You want to stretch them. You want to have fun. And we did that a lot. So we went from, Unicorn Western all the way to Trillionaire Boys Club. Like there's a lot of stuff in between there. And where do we find the sweet spot and what keeps us going? And it's a lot of fun to just play, but you can't always play because at some point you have to pull back and grow up a little bit. So it seems like something we would rebel against, having to mature and, wear our big boy pants and be responsible. But that hasn't been the case at all. I think, for Dave especially, it gives him security to know that we're, doing fewer things and getting better at those things and, kind of clearing the decks. It gives Johnny, a wonderful sense of structure because he gets to perform at the things that he's best at, which is making things better. If we have a tighter vision and clear idea debt and clear idiot debt and runway in front of us, he could do his job so much more effectively. And I would be at least, from the outside looking in, the loose cannon who's running free with, all the like abandon and bringing, inviting crazy into the company.
And 4 pairs of scissors in your hand.
Right. But that's really not the case. Ever since we've been very aware of needing to clean things up. And it's just not an overnight process. We got too sprawled too fast in every part of the company even when we were just purely creative, Dave and I showed no restraint. We started 5 different series and then Amazon was like, knock, knock. We're like, hello. And they're like, would you like to start 2 more series?
We could do 2 more.
Oh, and you pennies, you say? Okay. So we opened 2 more series and it's just been kind of crazy because now we've spent 6 years closing those 7 boxes. We're actually in the midst of closing that last one right now. And oh man, does that feel just amazing. And so we were scattered everywhere. And, you hear this as a parent all the time. And until you really experience it as a parent, that children love rules. They love fences. And how can they really love rules? No one really loves rules, but it's so true. We've said it for years that great fences makes great art and great fences makes great business. And we just know that. And we're trying harder and harder and being more diligent about reining ourselves in and deciding what's important. And that's what getting our shit together means. And it hasn't been, the process itself has not been painful. I think all 3 of us have very much embraced the process in its own way. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been pain along the way or that there aren't things to suffer through, because there are. But the overall idea is something that we've all been excited about and collectively inspiring each other to always continue.
So where do you think the line is between, because I think a lot of people get analysis paralysis. Now, by the way, nothing we say in here is legal advice or any, we're not qualified for that sort of thing.
Ever.
So don't ever take anything.
That's a universal claim.
As a suggestion. But I was just about to say something sort of legalistic, and it's not legal advice. Is a lot of people get hung up on the idea of whether you're working alone, whether you're working with partners. Do I need an LLC? Should I, if I'm an LLC, should I be like an S corp? Or should I have contracts with this person or that person? And a lot of people get so hung up on that sort of thing that they don't write. It's like the first business that I started when it was just me. And the funny thing is I knew the cliche and I fell into it anyway. I really wanted
How often does that happen though?
Do you know what the cliche is? Because I'll bet you can guess.
No, I'm sure I could guess, but what?
Okay. Well, the first thing was I felt like I needed an identity. I needed a logo. So I then went.
Oh yeah.
And printed up business cards. And
do you still have those business cards, Johnny?
I think I threw out the business cards, but I think Robin still is using stationery. We may have finally gone through it. And I got a ton of stationery and this was before like things like, Vistaprint were real like prevalent. So I like went to a printer. It cost me a lot of money to get envelope. Like I looked really pro and I didn't know business. So a lot of people fall into that trap, or they just don't do anything. Like, at least I made the stationery. And
do you know the Rainbows and Roses story?
No.
It was a little lark that I had that we could do this will make so much sense to you, right? I was convincing my dad, dude, we need a separate arm of the business that's just roses. It's really high profit. People know us as Rainbows, but it's Rainbows and Roses. And same shit, dude. I had all the business cards. I had a logo made, and to convince my dad of it, and he was like, "Okay."
Dave, when Sean's dad comes into town, I'm probably going to have lunch. Do you want to do it too, so that you can be like, because he's another victim. Like, Sean is doing this to him before he was doing to either of us.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll Skype you in.
So that's one side, is not actually doing anything because you're in such paralysis. And then the other side, paralysis in like details, which kind of don't matter, just get the ball rolling. And then the other side is never catching up. If we had never like swept the floor, not just sweeping the floor. Sweeping the floor is like getting your shit in order, truly. But we were doing things that really would have hurt us. Like, we didn't have any contracts between us. We weren't paying attention to taxes correctly. We were throwing money away because our business structure was basically incorrect. So where is the line, or what is the time at which you pay attention to that stuff?
Well, I think that there's like a ratio, right? It's what fuel do you need most? And I would argue that in the beginning, the fuel you need most is momentum, right? Dave and I just needed to publish. Like, we needed to get Yesterday's Gone out. We didn't really have a choice unless I was going to keep working with Lori forever. Like, I couldn't really manage both of those worlds. I had to throw myself into it, and Dave had to throw himself into it. And so the most important, if we had stopped to form a proper LLC and, learn the consequences of publishing seasonal versus novel fiction, like, we never would have gone anywhere. And same with you and me in the early days, Johnny, if we had stopped to, really evaluate what it meant to build a story studio, right? That wasn't in our minds. It wasn't. It was, how can we monetize fast? It's 2012, and let's write. Like, let's get going. Let's have some fun. And I think that if we had slowed down and really taken our time to quote unquote do it right, we would have done a lot of things wrong. But then there came a point where we were moving fast enough where speed got expensive. And because I think in the early days, it was always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I think something happened a couple of years ago where it started being like 2 steps sideways, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step diagonally. Like, we were just so spread out that our steps truly forward were smaller than we deserved them to be, considering the momentum we should have been having, the decisions we were making, the amount that we were working, and the impact we were having in the industry.
Right. It's a little like the metaphor of getting your wheels balanced. So, you can go along for a while, like you start to notice a little wobble in your wheels or something like that. You can kind of go along for a little while, but if you
100,000 miles, thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. But as you, especially if it's like you're trying for more performance, like in this metaphor, you're racing your car or something like that, or you need some degree of performance from your car that isn't just everyday clunking around. Then that's going to start to really affect you. And as it gets more and more out of balance, then it becomes a bigger and bigger deal. And at some point you need to say, okay, I can't get the performance until I go back and fix what's wrong. And sometimes that means kind of gutting things. So you may have a system that works pretty well. This happens, by the way, when you outsource. And we've found this before too, where one of us will be doing all the stuff. So, there's a process, say, and Sean is doing it all because he's the one who understands and he's the one who created it. But then he can't do something else because he's doing it all. His time isn't freed up. And then you have to go backwards and teach somebody how to do it and create the systems. And that takes more time than just getting the damn thing done, which is why people are usually reticent to go ahead and make that step. So,
this isn't quite an exact parallel, but it's something. So right now with all the stuff that we're preparing for Invasion, like there's all these treatments that we need to prepare and pass over.
You realize that people don't know what you're talking. Okay, well, I guess that'll do it. I was going to say people don't necessarily know what we're preparing for invasion.
Well, we're preparing it to be shopped around in a very specific way, and we've been given a directive to create a package that's very shoppable. And part of that package is a series of treatments, and we want them to. We want our partners to be able to, and we're actually have an upcoming episode where we'll talk all about this arrangement and what this means. So consider this a teaser for later. But right now, we have a new arrangement with a company, and they're going to go shop our IP. And so we have to prepare this stuff for them to go do that. And it's hard because we've never done it before quite in this way. We've never had a timeline like this. We have to scramble to make it happen, to get it done fast. And the beautiful part is what they're asking for is actually part of our process now. We're working on other projects where we're doing all of this work before the project even starts. So in the future, when we have other properties rise to the surface and they're going to go get shopped in this way, all we have to do is go pluck it from the library. So there's a lot of parts of the company that are like that, where we had to go back, we had to hustle around, figure it out, get all hands on deck to pull this one thing off. But in the future, it's just the way things are done.
So let's talk about some of the things that we got together. Do you want to talk about the various kinds of debt first, or the more boring paperworky sorts of things first?
Well, don't ask me to put boring first. That's never going to happen.
I'll squeeze it in. Little spots.
Okay. Well, why don't we just knock out boring then? Just
okay.
Quickly.
Well, and I don't. This is one of those things where we're basically going to tell you what we did, because the level, like if we go into too much detail, it's going to be excruciatingly boring and not really applicable for most of you anyway.
Right.
So it's kind of like nobody wins. But we were very back of the napkin on just about everything. As a matter of fact, technically for a while there, Sterling and Stone wasn't even me and Dave. It was Sean and other partners. And it was really recent that we kind of realized, like, okay, the company structure isn't correct. The partners are technically incorrect. Now we weren't doing business as Sterling and Stone. We were just calling ourselves Sterling and Stone. So I mean, everything was by the board as it could have been, but not correct. And so we had to go and basically have a new LLC created, and that involved making it in Texas because it was in Ohio and this whole thing, and actually change the structure. We had to get an accountant. We had to get a lawyer. We didn't really have these people, and then do things like set up payroll. We have real legit employees. For a while, we just kind of had, hey, so-and-so is working with us and we'll just give them X amount of dollars. And that works for a little while, but then it becomes like, okay, well, they need to be real employees, and this is somebody's job. And
well, not just that, but when we were doing it that way, we weren't tying metrics weren't tied to anything. So there was no way to know whether an employee was performing or not, because even if whether they were working hard or not wasn't even relevant to whether they were doing a good job for the company. And that's on us. Like, you have to build that in a correct way so you know where your performance is coming from, when you know what you're putting into the machine and what the machine is producing. And we were really sloppy about that.
Well, and that was even down the road. I mean, we weren't paying attention to any of that. We hired people based on, do we like this person? What should they get paid? I don't know. How about X dollars per week? Never really stopping to think about, is that comparable to like industry standard? What is that per hour? It was just like, how about this money?
Return on investment.
Right. What's the return on investment? We hired a bunch of people that we didn't think it out. The things that they were doing were things that we wanted, but that we couldn't turn around and make money on. And we ended up really upside down. And basically, when we moved to Austin, my family, Robin left the job that she had. And so I said, well, you can, why don't you work with Sterling and Stone? She's got an accounting background. I said, well, you can kind of clean us up because we're a bunch of right-brained sort of crazy people. And she's very left-brained. And she just kind of was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, we weren't grown up. We weren't. It was at the beginning of 2016. We had really made a mess of a lot of stuff. We've learned a lot of these lessons now. We didn't have any real idea of like who reported to whom, what everybody's job description was. Like Dave said, what the return on a position was. We needed to get contracts in place between vendors and stuff, because there were a few times I know that with the website, like even with Seth, who's a good friend, I didn't realize you guys needed that. And, you know, we hadn't really planned to pay him that for something. Like he was like, landing pages. I didn't know you needed landing pages. So doing a better job of really, I guess, putting into print things that we had done on Faith before was sort of the equivalent of finally balancing those wheels, because the car needed to go faster and faster. It needed performance. We wanted everything tuned up in advance of sort of a performance boost. So that can close the boring stuff. But that was a lot of that. And we're still, well, maybe this is a good transition. We're still paying debt on that. Now, not literal debt, but like things that happened because we were operating that way for so long. We kind of called it idiot debt because we were idiots up until basically that point. And so it's taken us a long time to kind of slowly get free of one thing or another and begin to work as an oiled machine.
Well, it's like I'm sure every single person listening to this can relate to. At some point, they started some project. It could have been a book. It could have been cleaning out your garage. It doesn't matter. Could have been a blog. Yes, we've all been down that dusty road. So we start this project, and all of a sudden, there's 5 jobs that we did not know this particular project would require. So we start investigating each of those jobs, and each one of those has at least 3 other jobs that it requires. And then each of those little jobs has something else that's niggling.
This
and
was one of my constant things, because a lot of, like, Sean sees big picture, and a lot of times there were things I was like, okay, so but that just do this one thing is actually a million little things with the million.
Right. It's like pointillism. You know, right. If you get back far enough away from it, you see that, oh, there's like 1,000 points of light in that one image. And
who knew running a company would require so many people?
Right. Coordinated properly.
Right. And so it's really easy. You can see the scope creep here pretty clearly, because when we're
I can never think of scope creep without thinking of, like, you know, Rear Window with some really creepy guy. That's him, the scope creep.
We should write a book called Scope Creep.
We should.
It would be very different. But we can see this because when it was just the 3 of us, we were able to do so much more. It was only when we started, you know, like the whole Smarter Artist line, it just requires a different kind of staff. It requires a different kind of attention. It requires a different kind of delivery. The inputs are different. The outputs are different. And so our decisions started being based around these objectives. And, you know, I mean, Johnny's made this this analogy so many times, but it's so apt about, you know, if you start out and you're a degree off, you're going to Hawaii, but you're 1 degree off on your charted course, you're going to end up thousands of miles off course, because that's the way it works. And, you know, we ended up getting off course. And so once we realized, oh, we really have to turn around and start flying back that way. Well, you know, landmark by landmark, we continue to see the places that we've aired, and we realize, oh, that was a mistake. And then we have to go clean up those 3 or 4 mistakes that are related to that one thing. And then we see this other pocket over here. Oh, we never should have done that. And then we go clean those things up. So if you look at the earlier example of, you know, Dave and I are now finishing up White Space out of all the 7 series that we started. It wasn't just that we had those 7 series, because we didn't stop there. It's not like Dave and I said, you know, 6 years ago, holy shit, we got us 7 open boxes. Let's close them quick. No, we immediately opened Karma Police, and, like, I don't even know. We've had so many, 12 and Crash and Threshold and No Justice series. Like, we just kept going. And I know there's more. I know there's so many more. But we just kept going and going and going. And that makes it harder. It's that other adage that we always say, which is, if something needs to be done eventually, you should really consider doing it immediately, because there's a lot of things in the company that had we had that focus and had we had that level of maturity, we would be further along. But having said that, I think that we've been really good at hacking this stuff away and recognizing what needs to be done and making hard decisions, and getting better at making those hard decisions because they're never, ever fun.
I haven't heard from Dave in a while. I feel like we need a little bit more Dave at this point. By the way, I was playing some of our podcast for Austin for the show where Dave left mid-show, and we then
that's
filled
good.
for his presence, and he rather enjoyed that.
Or didn't you have like horrible things, like not safe for kids things? Me saying,
Well, there's just a little bit of swearing. It wasn't like
But
some of
it's
your
Dave.
worst.
Like,
Right.
I think that's how his family knows you.
was it one of those things? Who hasn't been alone in a porn?
No,
theater?
we didn't have that one. But the one that he liked the best was when I said something like, some people would consider some film better than like the Angry Birds movie, and you said, no, motherfucker, no. So that was pretty good. But anyway, any thoughts on anything so far, or do you just check in? It's like a check in with Dave.
No, this whole subject is boring to me. I mean, it's like being responsible and getting your shit. It's just all it gives me
Okay, but Dave, on the other side of that, how has it felt? Seeing the chaos getting reined in.
I like it. I'm not well equipped to dealing with the chaos tornadic activity that is you. So I'm glad to see it, becoming a smaller sort of tornado.
Well, I think the tornado is still there. It's just that it doesn't.
Well,
it doesn't.
We wouldn't have been able to focus without knowing what to focus on. I think that's kind of the thing. Is like there's so much noise when you don't stop and clear the decks, and it took clearing the decks. It took organizing things to realize, oh, we should be selling. We should be doing stories. And by the way, some of the really, really boring stuff, the actuarial like books, Excel spreadsheet, QuickBooks, whatever, the really,
Get
really
ready, Dave.
tedious shit, it took that analysis to say, oh, we make our money on fiction, we spend our money on the smarter artist, and like it took to see those trends, and that's when that changed the direction in the direction that we want to go. But actually, I've embraced this more and more. So I established a Slack group that where Megan and Perry and Robin can geek out on numbers. Like they can I want weekly check-ins on whatever. Like I want the Excel numbers of what each book is selling or series or whatever, promotions, because you need that visibility. Like, yes, it is the eating the vegetables thing, but it's so like it gives you freedom, basically.
I've never enjoyed vegetables more, and I know this sounds like a joke, and I'm not. Like I do, both in the company as a metaphor and in real life. I've never enjoyed vegetables more. I've been eating pretty healthy this last like 2 years. I'd say healthier than at any point in my life.
Well, aren't you better than me?
Well, it's really, no, I'm not. Left to my own devices, I'd be a terrible pile of shit, I'm sure. But
now do you feel better, Dave?
But Cindy, she cooks healthy and she cooks delicious, and so it's pretty easy for me to cook healthy. And she's been cooking with a lot more vegetables, and they're just well prepared. And I think that we've done a really good job at Sterling and Stone by making our vegetables well prepared. Like we're very diligent about separating the things that have to be done and trying to make them a little more fun. And even with, Johnny and I have a really rigorous schedule right now with trying to, right the ship of the company and, pay for all of our idiot debt, get us on the other side of that as much as possible, while also focusing on fiction and the stories and the, writing that ship, because we took our eye off the ball for, a full year and kind of for like 2 years. And so while that's all taking place, we had to, we had to decide on what Johnny's B project would be, because he just finished the third robot book. And, we had a deliberation about this, because there's a lot of like really serious things that needs to be done. And then there's like one really stupid, just totally ridiculous project.
It lifts out. It's the easiest thing to not be able to justify, to be like, well, clearly we don't need to do that.
Right. And it's not like it's one that'll take him a couple of days. It's like 3 weeks worth of production.
Right.
But but we strategically kept it there. You know what? No, we need candy.
Even
We
when
have a
something new came in that was really important.
Right. And it was a choice between, do we go here or do we stick to, look, we've had to eat a lot of vegetables and they're delicious. Like we're seeing the results of eating those vegetables. Our bodies look better. We have more endurance. We're good. But if you can, sometimes you just have to like go to the movie and have a big old tub of popcorn. You just have to. Like sometimes you need your candy. And so we chose to do that. And I think that we're pretty reasonable about that kind of thing. Like, let's have fun when we can afford to have fun, and let's, really buckle down and do the serious work. And right now, Johnny and I have to do some serious work that we're not totally in love with, but it's what needs to be done to make our company whole.
Yeah, that's actually a good transition into something that I was just thinking that I need to kind of add to this little schedule. And that is the idea of being responsible and doing what is necessary. So I want to detour to talk just a little bit about the idea of growing up and being better leaders, right? Because there are times, honestly, the way, as fun as this company is, there have been times when it's really, really tempting to just kind of be everybody's friend, just be in the scrum of like crazy fun conversation and not necessarily do what's best. And that's something that we have really tried to grow up and face this time is understanding what is best and what is not best, and do the things that aren't necessarily easy decisions, but to just grow up and realize that we are the bosses. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pick on Jen a little bit here. Not pick on, because it's a great revelation. Is there were some times when we were I'm gonna try to figure out how to say this. Some of our actions were putting her in a position where it's almost like she was exposed to too much, if that makes any sense. Like she was like, I don't want the burden of this, like I don't.
Talking to Dave, I understand.
Yeah, no, it was, can you think of a better way to describe this? I'm trying not to give specifics. It was like she kind of was asking, can I just please have the responsibilities of my job rather than feeling like I need to have the responsibilities of your job, because you guys, quite honestly, she didn't say it this way, you guys quite honestly are not just stepping up and keeping to yourselves shit that should be kept to you guys rather than everybody.
Yeah, Sean.
No, it was both of us.
Yeah, fuck you. No, but that's true. It's like when you're a leader, you have to be aware of how your actions affect the people around you. And it's because
you need to be willing to be a little lonely, is what some of that is.
Yeah, that's actually well said. And Johnny and I tend to isolate people in totally different ways, and it's never intentional, but I tend to be not standoffish enough, and Johnny tends to be a little too standoffish.
Mm-hmm. They both have their downsides.
They both totally have their downsides. And by being too open, which I am, I can be very open. And then when I'm not, because I can't afford to be, that could be hurtful. Or, it's not, like that's part of the double-edged sword of having a company like this, because anyone can reach out to anybody else through Slack. But that doesn't mean that you can just participate in everything. And you don't want people to feel left out. You want people to feel heard. You want people to feel included. That's all very important. But
and somebody needs to be the boss.
And somebody needs to be the boss.
Yeah.
So you have to say no. I mean, here's a good example. I don't know where we are in this anyway, but there's a project that we're developing right now. It's a really important project internally. We just have a lot of faith in this project, and it's a big idea project, and we have a cool partner for this project. And it's gone through 2 different writers. And now it's at its third home. Its third and final home. We absolutely know who's writing this. And we had to transition that. We had to take it away from a writer and move it to another writer. And we knew that was going to, not exactly hurt one of the writers' feelings, because we all get it. Like that's what we're here to do. We're here to collaborate, and you can't bring ego into it. And it really is matching up the right writer with the right project for the right potential. And, that's how we all win. But that does suck, right? Getting a project that you wanted to do taken away from you. It sucks. but it's what's best for the project. It's what's best for all the collaborators. It's what's best for the company. It's what's best for the imprint. It's what's best. And ultimately that means that's what's best for that author too, even if it doesn't feel like it. And so the easy thing to do is to just, you know what, you go do it. You really should, try again, because everything is saying this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like a right match. So the easy thing to do is just let them try again. But if it's probably not going to work out, you're wasting their time. If you know that you're operating opposite to a pattern that you have already seen a few times, then that's not fair to the company either. And it's like being a parent is hard. I mean, this really is, being the leader in a company is very much like being a parent. It's way easier to just give your kid the phone.
Well, I will say you're really good. Like in the past, when this has happened with other writers, you're really good about, finding the right story for that writer and developing something for them that works even better. So in the end, I think it's a win for everybody.
Oh, absolutely, dude. That's core. That's so core to what we're doing. We're trying very hard to find the writer, match writers with material. Like that's what it's all about. Because if you can't write from your heart space, it's gonna fall flat. You're not gonna get readers that love you forever.
And even that story that I did for Nano last year, I wasn't feeling it, so it sucked.
Right, you didn't connect to it. Right, exactly. And we've identified this pattern in-house, and it's happened a few times now, and it's kind of magic. I think it's the most magical thing we've found in storytelling so far this year is identifying when a writer is not connecting with their material and they've told themselves that they are. And it happens all the time. And the difference between a writer truly connecting with their material and not is the difference between writing that just flows and writing that is painful to get out. And I think we've all experienced that, but now we're seeing it as, 17 writers gives you a lot of data, right?
There's a difference between writing that feels like you have, it's a calling, and writing that feels like it's a job.
Absolutely. And so we're finding that, and we're homing in on it. But that also means that we have to communicate, and writers have to believe that is part of the process. And everyone who has kind of rolled along with that, they've really benefited from it. So even if we don't get it right on the first or the second or even the third book, which that's happened. I mean, one of our authors now wrote totally in the wrong genre. And then we figured that out. They wrote in the right genre, and then they wrote another book. Right now they're on their fourth book, and we've kind of clicked into, well, this person's clearly going to write these kinds of books forever. Like they're flying through it. They've never been happier. They've been writing for, 20 years. And now it's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. They'd spent a lot of time writing the wrong stuff. And that's, I think, a good parallel for what's happening company-wide right now. We're finding that, oh, we were doing the wrong stuff. I mean, honestly, The Smart Artist was the wrong genre for us. It just was. There's so much of it that felt right. And for this author, she was writing romance, and that felt really right to her for a lot of reasons. But she ignored the reasons that were nagging at her that it wasn't right. And she just said, no, I'll get over those, or that's resistance or whatever. She never even considered that it was totally the wrong genre. It took us years to realize The Smarter Artist is the wrong genre. We should just approach that differently, because before it was, like half of our business, it was really fun. So when it's
mixed up with the fact that we do enjoy talking to people. We do enjoy teaching in a certain vein. It's not that we want to, curl up into a cabin that's isolated in the woods and never talk to anybody. So it was hard to realize that doing the podcast and talking with people and interacting and being in public and stuff like that, that is cool for us, at least for Sean and I. Dave doesn't like being in the public. That's really cool. But creating hard goods for sale, which we then have to write like sales letters and stuff, and sales emails, and like that's the part where it crossed the line. So that's what was difficult about that. I think that maybe a good way to wrap all of this up is and that actually does kind of tie to that, is self-honesty and open communication, which kind of go together. It kind of goes with being willing to be a good leader and stuff. Is we're also trying harder and harder to honestly listen to each other, even amongst the partners, especially amongst the partners, and to be honest with ourselves. So there have been situations in the past, well, constantly, but certainly over the past year, half year, where we've all heard things that we don't want to hear, all three of us. And
they're really fun.
Right. We all respond differently to them. We have very different patterns, but all three of us heed the lessons. Like there's a period where it's resisted in some way, but then all three of us then, like, once we're past our initial knee-jerk reaction, go, oh, okay, yeah, and we adjust. And that's something that we're trying to do is, I think we mentioned black box thinking before. It's a book that Jen read and recommended, and then Sean read and recommended, and that I'm reading. And it's about learning from failure and a culture that doesn't resist failure on sort of ego or hierarchical or social structure grounds is one that can grow and learn, whereas one that's a closed loop where failure basically doesn't exist and assumptions aren't tested because it's like, I see no evil, I hear no evil. That's the key to developing the company we want to have.
Right. Imagine if your parents, they never admitted that they were wrong, right? They could never be wrong and you could never question them. And that's just, you're not going to raise a good kid. It's impossible. Because it's the child then grows up thinking something is erroneous. And I don't know, that's not the way to nurture anything, but being able to admit your mistakes. I admit my mistakes to my children all the time, and they trust me because of that. And I think it's true internally too. I think that,
sorry, son, you're a mistake.
I've told him that. Not even kidding. The fact that we're always kind of on that, and we're honest with each other, and we're asking with each other, and we're very much candid about, what we can do better and what each other can do better and our mistakes. That's how we grow. That's how we've done, I think, 20 years worth of work in 6. We work hard and we attract people who work hard, but we also attract people who don't bring in the ego and, are really willing to unbox their mistakes. And if they do bring ego into it, then they just don't end up lasting very long, because that's just it doesn't thrive in this environment.
Or they adjust.
Yeah.
All right. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about planning for the long haul. We're just going to kind of talk about the scope of our team, how we're trying to build it out. There's some amusing things that are in this where we plan for the long haul one way and then we plan for a long haul another way. I came across org chart 0.5 forever ago. I was flipping through my camera roll, and I wish I'd saved every one, because it's just every time I think, okay, I got a handle on this company, and then changes again. So,
I wish you had saved them. That'd be pretty amazing.
Well, because I kept thinking we were iterating forward, and I didn't realize how amusing it was going to be to look back. Anyway, so that'll be in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Story Studio podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Story Studio podcast. Are you wondering what the ever-growing demand for superb storytelling skills means for your future? Check out our latest interview as Johnny and Sean dive deep into that question in Storytelling is the Future, how to build on your self-publishing success. Download the interview from the info box or show notes in YouTube, or head over to sterlingandstone.net/future.